Welcome to Season 5 of AIHA's podcast series, The Healthier Workplaces Show, where we explore timely and informative topics about occupational and environmental health and safety. I'm your host, Alejandro Castillo. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Lester Claravall. In his nearly 3 decades with the Oklahoma Department of Labor, Lester has been a driving force for protecting children in the workplace. He has pioneered partnerships, programs, and publications to educate employers, educators, parents, and teenagers about workplace rights and safety. Lester played a key role in developing the award-winning game Paying Attention Pays, which is now used to teach workplace rights and safety in schools throughout Oklahoma and North Carolina. He also launched the nationally recognized video contest Speak Out for Workplace Safety, which empowers students in Oklahoma high schools to create public service announcements promoting job safety. As a state partner with NIOSH, Lester helped provide a talking safety curriculum for nationwide use and led the effort to pass the first law requiring workplace safety education for all Oklahoma students in grades 7 through 12. His leadership has driven major reforms in child labor laws and workplace safety education. Lester is the 2026 recipient of the Alice Hamilton Award for Social Responsibility. This award distinguishes individuals who have recognized and addressed the diverse needs of the workforce by developing and advancing the practice of social welfare and responsibility through public service, community service, and non-traditional social reform, thereby making a major impact and improvement of public welfare. Lester, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you spent nearly 30 years at the Oklahoma Department of Labor. What drew you to this work?
Yeah, so I was finishing up my studies at the University of Oklahoma, and then this opportunity came about with the state, which was called the Carl Albert Executive Fellows Program, which was a 2-year program that would enable students to go to work for a state government, but it would also enable us to finish up our work. And so I was able to get one of those fellowships through the Oklahoma Department of Labor. And that's how I got started in the world of young worker safety.
Now, you spent nearly 30 years. How has it been? Like that, you must have seen so much impact and change throughout those years.
Yeah, no, when I first started it, I didn't know that I would be led to it because at the time, I thought I wanted to go to work in the private sector in training and development or some type of HR field. And so what had originally attracted me to the labor department was it dealt with labor laws. And so my fellowship actually started in the wage and hour unit, where I was learning about the different wage laws, but there was an opening with the child labor unit that was vacated. It was vacated for 6 months. So there was a lady that started the program, and then she exited out and eventually became my supervisor. Then they put another employee in that situation, and then he exited out to be a supervisor in another division. And so they didn't have anybody fill that spot. And I was just a fellow, or kind of like an intern. It was a 2-year fellowship program. And so at the time, it was my goal to stay with it for 2 years and then kind of go from there. And so 6 months into this fellowship, they asked me if I wanted to head up the child labor unit, which would involve the youth employment laws, young worker safety. And so I agreed to do it. And I didn't know I was going to develop a passion for it. And then, who would have thought that I would be in this field going on 30 years? I just really have a passion for going out and doing what needs to be done to, kind of fight that good fight to protect young workers. And so if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be with it, but I really enjoy working in the field, working with others to keep those young workers safe in the job.
Absolutely. Was there a particular experience that made you passionate about protecting young workers?
Yeah, because there's studies that are out there. So what's interesting is, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, which is our federal counterparts, there's on average about 200,000 young workers under 18 that are getting injured on the job. Of that figure, 77,000 are serious injuries. And then of those figures, 70 of them end up being fatal. And so when we're talking about young workers under the age of 18 getting killed on the job, that's unacceptable. I mean, there are ways to prevent that, because when we talk about hazards in the workplace, there are ways to keep not only the adult workers safe, but the young workers as well. And so there seems to be this misconception that, we spend a lot of time keeping our kids safe from strangers or different things that they could come across if they have a cell phone or just other areas. But when you talk about kids in the workplace, they already have limited knowledge going into the workplace, transitioning in the workplace. They're not as versed on workplace rights, job worker safety. And so just being able to do different programs to help them transition it's a feel good sort of situation because we're giving them the mindset to think safety before they transition to the workplace. And then the hope is that they'll have the safety eyes and the safety mind to think safety, which will in turn reduce those injuries that shouldn't be happening in the first place.
How did the idea for a workplace safety game come about, and what did you discover during the development phase?
Yeah, so earlier I was talking about how I wanted to go into training and development. Kids in the classroom learn a little different than adults because I could stand in front of a classroom and give a lecture over the labor laws and I would lose them in the first minute. A lot of them, they're not working or they don't grasp what it is that adults would understand. And so it's a matter of teaching things that are important for high school students or middle school students because that's the target audience because they're getting ready to go into the workplace. You got to teach them a little different. And so the way that Paying Attention Pays came about is just taking those concepts of understanding that you got to make it where kids are having fun or learning. It's interactive so that they can process it. And it's kind of like experiential training where they kind of get the experience or the interaction of it that enables them to process it and remember it. And so Paying Attention Pays is sort of set up like a trivia where it asks the 20 most commonly asked questions that students need to know before they enter into the workforce because, they do have limited knowledge on their rights. And so the way that this program is set up is we break the class into teams so that they can interact with other people in the teams because we let the students know right off the bat that they're not expected to know any of these answers. The idea is for them to have some fun with this, but they're going to learn at the same time and to try to figure out which question they believe is the best answer through the teamwork of their small groups. And so we go through 20 questions. For each question, there's 3 responses. 2 are incorrect. One is the correct answer, and then that's where they work with their teams to try to figure out which one is the right answer. And if they get the question right, they get a youth employment dollar. If they get the question incorrect, they don't get paid anything. And then the team that has the most youth employment dollars at the end, they get like a small prize. It could be candy. It could be one of those squish balls or something to kind of be a little bit of an incentive. But the questions are worth different denominations. We use play money. And they really get into the play money. They get into the fun of trying to beat the other teams. And students love it. Teachers love it. We've done evaluations. It was a partnership between the Oklahoma Department of Labor and the Oklahoma State Department of Education. So you got labor and education working together. And then that's how we were able to get into more than 100 schools across the state. We've had the opportunity to present it at national conferences. And to this date, there's 2 states that are now Paying Attention Pays, Oklahoma and North Carolina. And so they modeled their youth outreach with our program in Oklahoma. And it's just nice to be able to have a way to educate kids by something where they're playing the game and they're having fun learning about their rights and safety on the job.
Join the Climate, Health, and Sustainability 101 webinar on July 22nd and earn 1.5 contact hours. This introductory webinar provides OEHS professionals with a foundational understanding of climate change, health, and sustainability as they relate to the workplace. Scan the QR code to learn more.
Now, this sounds like a very fun game. Is there an age limit?
target audience would be seventh grade all the way up through high school. So if we, let's say, hit the middle schools, we would go about it a little differently because a lot of them are not working yet. But when we get into the high schools, then we could go into a little more depth. I mean, a lot of them are already working or have worked, and so we can go into a little more of a discussion, and then they could learn. But yeah, we could do it as young as seventh grade.
Now, what have students taught you about engaging young people in safety education?
When they learn that they can work, they're excited. But again, they don't have that mindset to understand the things that they need to know. They want to get into the workplace, and it's our job as safety professionals to ensure that those kids transition and that they understand the things that they need to know. A lot of them, like I said, they have limited knowledge on their workplace rights, job safety issues. But there's also reports that are out there where these kids, they sometimes don't want to speak up. And so we try to let the kids know that as we're going through our presentations in the classroom to, make sure that they ask questions. If they don't understand, it's okay to ask questions, or to report a hazard if you see something that might be dangerous, or if there's things that may not be clear to ask. We would rather them ask questions than to do something improperly, and then that can lead to an injury later on. And so it's just a matter of understanding that sometimes they may be afraid to speak up or say anything. And so we're just trying to change that mindset that it is okay to ask questions. It is okay to ask for safety training, because nobody wants their livelihood affected where it could affect them later on. And so the whole idea is keeping everybody safe. And, that's not just the labor department's responsibility. That's also the responsibility of the employer, the community, and even parents to understand what their kids are doing and take a more vested interest on the things that they're doing so that we're ensuring that these kids are safe.
Now, you mentioned about speaking up. Let's talk about Speak Out for workplace safety. Tell me more about this video contest. What inspired you to launch it?
So there's a national organization that each of the labor departments are involved with. It's called the Interstate Labor Standards Association. It's a network of each of the 50 states with their labor department officials. And so we meet annually to exchange best practices, ideas. And so I had first learned about the video contest from the state of Georgia. And then I learned that other states like California and others were also doing that. So that kind of gave Oklahoma the idea of putting together a video contest. So we partnered with the Oklahoma Safety Council to do this jointly, because what we wanted to do is also award cash awards. And so the Oklahoma Safety Council, as a nonprofit 501c3, was able to solicit donations with the private sector. And so they were able to take donations and award the cash awards. And then we were able to not only promote it together, but facilitate the contest together. And so in the past, we would allow students to take what they learn. We would use the NIOSH Youth at Work Talking Safety curriculum, and then we would work with Career Tech to get the curriculum in the hands of over 700 teachers across the state. They would teach the curriculum, and then their students would in turn take what they've learned and create a public service announcement that would teach their peers about workplace safety. So it's kind of like students teaching students, peer-to-peer training, because sometimes, students, they may not listen to adults, but when they're seeing other students teaching them about workplace safety, then it kind of sparks their interest. And so we then set a deadline, and then we host a reception at the state capitol on a week that the governor proclaims as Speak Out for Workplace Safety Week, and with the highlight being the showcasing of the videos at the state capitol, where not only do family and friends come to attend, but we have the lawmakers, we have educators and others in the community that want to support this endeavor. And in the past, we've awarded first place $1,000, second place $700, third place $300. And so the money The hope would be that they would use that prize money for their education, but they're free to use it for whatever they want to use it for. And then we would use those winning videos throughout the year to educate others about workplace safety, not only with students, but at different events that we go to as a way to highlight that there's an importance of young worker safety and we want to keep everybody safe.
Now, why is it important for young people to become advocates for workplace safety rather than recipients of that information?
It's really important for them to understand that there are things in the workplace that can happen. And we know that every place, whether it's an office, whether it's a movie theater, restaurant, grocery stores, there's going to be hazards in the workplace. So it's important for them to understand that it's there and that there's the potential for injury or harm. Why is it so important for them to become advocates of it? Because they're going to be the future leaders. They're going to be the future managers. And eventually, some of them may get into a certain industry like construction or manufacturing, or even in restaurant, kitchen safety, that once they have the understanding of it, then they could turn around and pay it forward and make sure that the workplace is safe. Because when they learn it early, then they understand the importance of it. And then when they get of age where they become the future managers, the future administrators, the future frontline, or the future owners, then they can understand that it is an important topic. And then they could turn around and ensure that their workplace is safe so that nobody is getting hurt or injured. Because when we're talking about young worker injuries, that could be very problematic and disastrous for a company. And so it's nice for them to initially learn it, but it's also nice for them to take a vested interest in it because then they can advocate for it. And then some of them may end up being lawmakers, and then they can understand the importance of it so that if, let's say, that there is a law that needs to be passed, they can be advocates to try to push for things that would help in the long run.
Now, you led the effort to pass Oklahoma's law requiring workplace safety education for high school students. What did it take to turn that vision into reality?
Yeah, so the way it worked and the way the law came about is we allowed LADA public schools to take part in the study. And it was a situation that involved NIOSH to work with the teachers and teach the curriculum, and then they would do a pre-test, a post-test, and then determine whether or not those kids retain the information, which in the long term they did. But while that was going on, the teacher, her name was Stacy Oakley, she had gotten in contact with her lawmakers and got the students involved with the process of trying to go beyond just the classroom. And so it went from the classroom to the state capitol because a law was drafted from that district to talk about the importance of having a curriculum in the schools. And so those students got to meet with the lawmakers. It went through the House, it went through the Senate, and then it was waiting for the governor to sign. And so before that happened, the governor's office was in discussions with the Oklahoma Department of Labor. And since I was aware of the process by working with NIOSH, working with the teacher, having interactions with the lawmakers, I said that by having this law, it's actually a good thing because it's not going to cost the state any additional funds, which that was the concern. It wasn't going to cost the state any money because it was something that I was already doing as part of my job with the child labor unit. And if we continue to work with our partners, it was something that was doable. So the governor eventually signed it. There was a nice ceremonial with that, a governor's signing of the bill. And we had the kids there, we had the teacher there, and we just kind of celebrated that now we have a law that would now require the Labor Department to collaborate with the Education Department to provide workplace safety from grades 7 through 12. We learned from NIOSH that we became the first state in the nation to pass what's called the Mainstreaming Occupational Safety and Health into Education law. And then it was a year later, Texas followed suit by passing a similar law. And then in the years following, there was about a dozen states that were also considering passing a law modeled after Oklahoma. It is very difficult to get a law passed because it does involve a lot of networking. It involves bringing the educators, the lawmakers, the education department, labor department together to all be in the same page. But just the mere fact that there were discussions on it and we had two states that actually passed it, that was a huge accomplishment. And we've had states since that have gotten in contact with me to consult on how we went about getting that law passed. And so anytime you can help neighboring states or colleagues, we're in this together. And so if we can get that out there, then the better. But it was something that we were not aware that we were the first state to do it, but we were thrilled that we were kind of like a model state to ensure that we had workplace safety training available to the students.
AIHA Connect 2027. Call for proposals is open. Submissions are due September 9th. Scan the QR code to learn more.
Now, you're the 2026 recipient of the Alice Hamilton Award. What does this recognition mean to you professionally and personally?
I'm honored to have had that opportunity to receive the award, and it is something that was almost accepted on behalf of everybody that was involved with it, because it just wasn't a one-person show. It made me reflect on a lot of the different networks and a lot of the mentors that got me to that place. It's almost something that was on behalf of the children, because sometimes they don't have a voice. And so we're the ones that could fight that good fight and do the things that we need to do to ensure that that young worker safety is at the forefront. And then I think about all the different colleagues and the different professionals that I've had the opportunity to work with, not just in Oklahoma, but across the United States and around the world. We're almost in the same situation where we're doing different things for our respective areas, but we're all in it together. And if this was an opportunity to showcase, the AIHA also recognizes that you got the adult world with a lot of the safety issues that come into play with the older workers. Let's not forget that there's also the young workers that also need to be protected and at the forefront as well. And I think that what ended up happening is, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first time that it went to somebody that was dealing in the young worker safety world, which brings attention to the honor, but it also puts young worker safety on the spotlight. And so I was very grateful for that opportunity. And it also motivates me to continue to do the work that still needs to be done to ensure that we are doing everything that we can to keep those children safe.
Lester, thank you so much for joining me today.
Now, thank you so much for having me.
That wraps up today's episode of the AIHA's Healthier Workplaces show. To learn more, visit the AIHA website and follow us on social media. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, remember that healthier workplaces mean a healthier world. Until next time.